It all starts in the dark. This isn't a story about ghosts, no. This is about the things that haunt our blood. Just picture it. You're in the attic. Dust is floating in this single beam of light. And you pull this heavy, leather-bound book out of an old chest. The title is so faded you can barely read it. The Jukes. You crack it open and your breath just catches in your throat. These names, they aren't strangers. The dates, the places, it all branches out into a family tree that is, without a doubt, yours. This isn't just some old study. This is a record of you. All right, so let's get into what you're seeing. The first section is just a ledger. Cold, methodical. It's like a clinical account of your family's complete and utter decay. And this is where it all begins, with Max, your ancestor, born sometime around 1720. The notes say, hunter, hard drinker, averse to toil. His sons married the Jukes sisters, and just look at the notes for them. Ada, your great-great-something grandmother, called the mother of criminals. Belle, who started a line of paupers. This isn't a family tree. It's an indictment written in your blood. And as you keep turning the pages, the individual stories, they start to blur. They're replaced by something much more horrifying. A pattern. You realize the curse isn't just in the stories, it's written in the numbers themselves. The author managed to trace 709 of your relatives. Think about that. 709 lives, all tangled in this vast web, all leading back to that one single tainted source. Then the book focuses on the women in your family, and you see this chart. Over half, 52.4%, are flat out cataloged as harlots. The author doesn't even describe it as a choice. He writes about it like it's just an undeniable feature of the bloodline. And this isn't just, a string of bad luck. No, it's a statistical anomaly. It's 29 times more frequent than in an average community. A deviation so huge it feels less like chance and more like some kind of biological law. And then you see the numbers on poverty. Your family, the Jukes, was almost 7 times more likely to end up in the poorhouse than the average person. Generation after generation, it's this inescapable slide into ruin. And then, here it is. The violence, burglary, assault, 5 counts of murder. These aren't just statistics anymore, are they? These are the actions of your family. The same genetic code that gives you the shape of your face gave them this. And that's when the book it falls from your hands. Because the numbers on the page suddenly feel like a diagnosis. And the focus shifts from the past to you, right here, right now. You think about that flash of anger you felt in traffic this morning, that lazy impulse to just not do anything, the darker thoughts you push down and never, ever speak aloud. And suddenly, you don't see them as your own feelings anymore. They're echoes of your ancestors. The mother of criminals, the hard-drinking hunter. They're not in the book. They're in your head. And that's the question that just freezes you solid. Where do you end, and where does your inheritance begin? I mean, is free will even real when your entire biological history is screaming that you are destined to fail, to fall, to break? And that's the terrible conclusion that just settles over you like a shroud. The trap was sprung generations ago. Your fate isn't your own. It's a sentence, passed down through the family, and it lives inside your very cells. But then, you force yourself to do it. You pick the book up again. You decide to read not just the data, but the author's own words in the introduction. And something shifts. This is the prison you've been sitting in. This belief that your biology is destiny, that you are nothing more than the latest entry in a long, long ledger of ruin. There's a name for this. It's called hereditary determinism. The ultimate horror, right? Losing yourself to a script written centuries before you were born. But what if you've been reading the script all wrong? And there it is, right there in the introduction, clear as day. Written by the author himself, Richard Dugdale. And he says the exact opposite of what you've been fearing. He didn't believe heredity was a death sentence at all. He believed the environment was the key. So the curse you were feeling was this inescapable fate passed down through your blood. But what the author was actually arguing, that bad living conditions, isolation, neglect, lack of education, a bad environment, that's the real culprit. He wasn't documenting some genetic monster. He was documenting the tragic, predictable outcome of people trapped in a cycle of poverty. And the horror, it doesn't just vanish, it just changes shape. The curse is very, very real, but it was never in your genes to begin with. You suddenly realize the trap was never your bloodline. The trap was the misinterpretation. The world saw this story and just chose the simplest, most frightening explanation it could. Bad blood. And that misreading had absolutely devastating consequences. See, Dugdale published his work in 1877, and he was arguing for social reform. But by the early 1900s, his work was hijacked. It was twisted into proof that things like poverty and crime were hereditary traits that needed to be bred out of the population. It was used to fuel the eugenics movement and justify absolutely horrific discriminatory laws. And that leaves you with one final, chilling thought. The book in your hands, it wasn't a story about your inescapable inner demons. It was a warning. A warning that the most dangerous traps aren't actually in our DNA, but in the stories we choose to believe about each other. Which brings us to the real question. If a good environment is the key to escaping the cycle, what happens when a society, convinced of your bad blood, becomes the very environment designed to make sure you can never, ever get out?